Software development, a pseudo-scientific cargo cult based upon superstitious belief systems. Some people would argue that such a sentence would be an extraordinarily claim, hence purely logically requiring extraordinary evidence. So I'm going to try to provide that evidence for you in this video by going through the pillars most of us believes in when it comes to software development. So let's start out with resource management. Now, whenever a software project is late, typically 9 out of 10 CTOs, that is a guesstimate, but I'm pretty sure every single one of my viewers can agree upon that it is a fairly accurate guesstimate. So 90% of all CTOs in the world will look for additional resources to add to the project. Because the project is late, so they're thinking if you add more resources to the project, then things will go faster, right? I've heard that argument 100 times myself throughout my 27 years as a professional software developer in companies of all sizes. And we've known since the 1970s that that's bullshit. Basically, it's pseudoscience. The belief in that you can make a project finish faster by adding more resources to it is the very definition of pseudoscience, because we've had science on these issues for 55 years. Frederick Brooks wrote a book already back in 1970 where he had conducted an exhaustive study in software development internally within IBM. And his studies have been proven countless of times afterwards too. And he would create these analogies and parables that were intended to become easy to remember for the human mind, such that we should remember the natural laws of software development, if you wish. And some of these are adding more developers to an already late project only makes it later, right? Which directly opposes the idea of that you can actually make a software development project finish faster by adding more resources to it. In fact, quite the opposite. The software project will inevitably become even slower. Then you have other things he would say, such as one man can do in 1 month what 2 men can do in 2 months. And he literally proved it. And it's been proven 1,000,000 times since those days. And then you have other assumptions and superstitious beliefs held, such as, for instance, that in order to combat future complexity, we need to provide adequate abstractions through usage of mechanisms such as, OOP, design patterns, microservices, DDD, event sourcing, etc., etc., etc. And we decide to implement these types of technologies because we are taught to believe that it makes the project more scalable and more easily maintained in the future, reducing our technical debt. While, fucking count lines of code, for fuck's sake, in the system I just described and compare it to my 5-liner of Hyperlambda. Right, so obviously maintaining 5 lines of code in Hyperlambda is easier than to maintain 5,000 lines of code scattered around 11 different programming languages and 37 fucking microservices. And then there's the assumption of that, you know, yeah, but we do it for scalability reasons. What scalability reasons? I can replicate my PostgreSQL database in a Kubernetes cluster and have it serve fucking 11 billion read invocations per microsecond. What scalability? Do you need more than that? Seriously? Right? And I mean, as to inserts, it tolerates 100,000 per second if it runs on adequate hardware. How many inserts do you need? How many users do you think are gonna sign up for your stupid iPhone app the first month? You really think it's gonna be more than 100,000 per second? Right? Or are you gonna outsource it and start marketing it on Mars and different galaxies and shit? So basically, you're paying by increasing the size of your code base, sometimes into absurdity. I've seen simple CRUD read apps with, you know, tens of thousands of lines of code for a simple fucking read invocation, right? So, as I said, software development is a pseudo-scientific cargo craft, and if we actually measured, right, and based our decisions upon, you know, scientific facts, absolutely everything we do today would not be done the way it is being done. Agile, for instance, especially Scrum. You know, I could talk about Scrum for days without repeating myself and without having a single compliment coming out of my mouth during those days. No SQL databases, so now I can't fucking group or join, right? Or partial record updates and shit like that, which we've taken for granted for 50 years. How is removing those three features progress? Can you explain that to me? Still, like 95% of every single software project started today starts with Mongo or Couchbase because they want scalability. When I just proved how PostgreSQL can insert 100,000 records per second. Apologize. 100,000 inserts per second. How many do you need? I mean, Twitter has never had that many inserts per second. Never. So, if we actually start measuring, so what do we know? Well, we know, for instance, that a declarative programming language produces 5% of the code base. And thanks to that I measured a couple of days ago, we also know that a declarative programming language is actually faster than an imperative programming language, given all other criteria being equal. Right? I mean, I basically proved how Hyperlambda is faster than C# 2 days ago. Right? I need to emphasize C# with entity framework. However, that's the way 98% of every single application I've seen in the entirety of my career as an enterprise software developer actually looks like. And we're talking about 50 plus companies on 3 different continents. So it's not like as if I've been exposed exclusively to one side of the situation here. Right? So we know for a fact that a declarative programming language produces 5% of the lines of code. Relatively speaking, if you compare it to an imperative programming language. We know that it is faster. I mean, I created Hyperlambda in C# and still it's faster than C#. How the fuck does that even work? Right, now I know how it works, and it's because of that entity framework. It's a hot smoking pile of garbage. Right. And, you know, so this becomes future technical debt for your employer, literally. Lines of code is the way we measure technical debt. There is no technical debt besides line of code. Lines of code is the definition of technical debt, period, end of the main. The more lines of code you have, the more technical debt you have, right? So, we're basically at the point now in time where like, you know, Christian monks and bishops were like 600 years ago when they would spend 3 weeks debating whether or not Jesus had a purse or not, or shit like that. where absolutely 100% of our decisions as an industry goes 180 degrees into the wrong direction. And every single so-called development and progress we've had literally since 1970 has been a step backwards. OOP, fucking brain damage. Like, why aren't you guys using functional programming languages? Etc, 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 etc. Now, ask me about anything in the comments related to software development, and I will prove how whatever it is we are doing today literally is the exact opposite of what we should be doing. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.